And welcome to a brand new episode of the Untold. Of course, the show have brilliant people, artistic people, and for today's episode, it's no exception. We have Shaikha Bugrais, who's a very talented designer, illustrator as well. Wouldn't you say so, Lajane?
I think so, and I'm very curious about her life because from a young age, she's lived in many places. In fact, she's was born in Kuwait, but raised in Amsterdam, India, Indonesia, Jordan, Bahrain, and later the US. Like, that's a lot of places to grow up.
It is, mashallah, all those places. I wish I could travel to them, right? They are beautiful. I can't imagine living there. I imagine all of those experiences have tremendous memories, tremendous, stories within them. And I'm sure we'll explore all of that in today's episode.
I agree, and I'm curious to see how these places also affected her relationship with herself and her relationship with creativity and design and art. And with that, we are going to take a quick break.
And we are back, ladies and gentlemen, on the Untold after the break. So first, thank you for joining us, but most importantly, thank you, Sheikh Bugrais, for being our guest here tonight on the Untold. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you. And I know that you're a multidisciplinary designer. But before we get into that, I wanted to ask you about, when people ask you where you're from, how do you answer that? Like with a story, with a place? Because mashallah, you seem to have grown up in many different places.
Yeah, I think it depends on who's asking, because it's a loaded question. I've been in 7 different countries, so it's like whoever, if we're in depth, then I'll go through the countries, but really it's the Kuwait. Like I'm always repping the Kuwait.
Love that.
It is. And also, can you elaborate more on the countries there? Because we have all the time in the world here on the Untold.
So I grew up in Amsterdam mostly, and then followed by India, Indonesia, Jordan, Bahrain,
MashaAllah.
the Kuwait, and then I moved to study in New York, which is like the longest place I've lived in voluntarily that I had to stay in. And yeah, I think up until 13 I moved back to the Kuwait, but it's like pretty much majority of my life I've been abroad.
Yeah, that's a lot of moving around, especially
Yeah.
at a young age. And it seems like you grew up with all these different cultures, different lifestyles.
Yeah.
So what did all that change kind of teach you about yourself or about, people at an early age?
Adapting, and there's so much world out there. Like when you meet so many different people, like you realize there's so much culture that goes in it. Like I loved learning. I was always like an observant kid, so I'm like, oh, like what's Indonesia about? Like what's Amsterdam about? Like I loved learning there, and the schools always like made sure to enforce each country's culture, so I really loved diving deep in everyone's backgrounds.
So, every time you go to a new place, what would you say is one of the biggest hurdle to overcome? Is it the language barriers, the community, the, culture? What was that major step you had to take every time?
At a young age, I think it's friends and not having like that consistent friend that you take with or you grow up with. Like you always have to meet new people, learn how to fit in again, like learn a new environment and get used to that. So that was always like my biggest hurdle, but otherwise I never minded it. Like I really loved wondering and observing and understanding the different, like it was a blessing, and I understood that at a very young age, so I was really quick to adapt for the most part.
I think it's amazing that you were able to figure that out at a young age, that it was a blessing to be able to learn and observe so many different people and their cultures and experience so many different worlds, you could say. I think a lot of people, though, they only see like as a good thing, and they're not aware of maybe the downsides of it. So what would you say is the misconception people have about living abroad in so many different places at a young age?
I think my summers in Kuwait taught me that it was not normal and it was different, like to, especially English wasn't my first language, but it basically was at that point because I went to nursery in Amsterdam, so it's like the first official language that I actually learned. So coming here and not understanding what everyone's saying and not trying to also understand my own culture versus the culture that I've been growing up around, that was my biggest hurdle because it was not as understood and accepted here. Like, we have the McChicken misconception, and that was like my biggest issue. Otherwise, like I think I grew up and learned like, wow, not everyone had this opportunity. So it was like I really took the appreciation very highly.
So was there also a level of, frustration every time you go to a new place, new school, new friends, new community, new everything?
Making new friends, or no, missing my friends, I want to say, but making friends, I'm a pretty social person. Like, I'm just always been myself, so I didn't really care to fit in. So I think that worked in my advantage pretty well. Like, I was always very headstrong in my own interests, that it doesn't really matter. And so people just adapted to me the other way around. So I didn't really have a big problem with the moving.
I think that's great because I think a lot of kids might struggle in the other way, where they struggle to make friends because they're more shy or because they're not used to things. But since you seem to have a strong sense of self from a young age, it kind of helped you, I think, with the different moves, the different cultures. And as you said, you were able to see the blessing of it all from a young age. So you
Yeah.
got to actually enjoy it instead of just focusing on the negative, which is a really great way of looking at things, I think. Would there be a favorite place that you stayed in, or do they all kind of have their benefits?
Amsterdam has a soft spot, but I don't know if this counts in your question, but it's always New York, and it's the only place I got to choose where to go and live, but I think that's the love of my life, for sure.
I think that makes sense because, as you said, you got to choose going there,
Yeah.
and you were at an age more where you were older and able to kind of understand
Yeah.
different things about yourself. Like, I studied in London, and I always have a soft spot for that
Yeah.
just because of that. Like, it feels like another home to me.
Yes.
Doesn't matter how long I've been there or not. It just,
Yeah.
as I said, you got to choose to go there, so you really learn a lot about yourself. Do you
Exactly.
feel that way too?
It is, honestly. But on topic of New York, I think I may be the only person who actually hated my time staying there. It's so crowded for
You
some
have to give it a
unbelievable.
second
Yeah.
chance. Like, you have to have my list.
I just couldn't get into New York at all.
Yeah.
I've seen it in the movies, I've seen the songs about it,
Yeah.
but when I got there, it was so crowded, it was so noisy, it was so, and I'm in my old man phase.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now I want to ask you about something. You mentioned that at 13 you came back to Kuwait.
Yeah.
And I do want to ask you, was there, I would say, an adapting period when you came back to Kuwait, trying to fit in, trying to see your place, trying to see your home, and trying to navigate this kind of, your world as it is now when you came back from outside?
Yeah, I kind of had to like learn a new language overnight and understand my own culture overnight, because kids aren't as forgiving here, especially in like the middle school range. So I think that was a very confusing period, but I found, my day ones pretty quickly, and I like to make the best or the most out of where I am. So I think that works in my favor, and I think eventually like I learned to love it pretty quickly.
Yeah, no, I can imagine 13 is not an easy age to move back to Kuwait. Like, in
Yeah.
general, everywhere you go, teenagers, especially around that age, are the most difficult and
Yeah.
kind of going through a lot of things themselves. So they can be the hardest on their peers. It's really normal. But I'm really glad that you were able to make proper friends when you came. And I think that helped you out with a lot of the situations you were
sure.
in. And, it must have been a big culture shock for you as well, just from living so many different places to being back home properly. Or did your summers in Kuwait kind of prepare you?
They did not. They didn't. You just had to roll with the punches. Like, like life gives you lemons, like squeeze your heart out, because that's the best you can do. Like, that's the best I did. And eventually, like, I really, like I said, learned to love it, but it wasn't I want to say an easy start.
Now, I do want to ask you because you said that New York was the first country you actually chose. Was there a reason you chose New York, or is it something, an opportunity came, and that's where you went, and then you just fell in love with it?
So when I first studied abroad, I was in Maryland, and they took us on a school field trip to New York on my birthday. So like my anniversary with the city's on my birthday, so it's like extra special. And I immediately like fell in love with it. Like, the moment I landed, I just like, I want to be here. This is the place I want to be. And after graduation, I was supposed to do my OPT. COVID happened, so nothing really worked out as planned, but I ended up staying there for like over 5 years, like 8 years in total. So
MashaAllah.
yeah, they couldn't pull me away from it. Like, I fell in love.
Well, I'm glad you found a place to fall in love with. And I think the fact that the first time you went was your birthday, that's so special.
Yeah.
Kind of like a sign almost.
Yeah, and it's
because
also the area code 929. So I'm
No
like,
way.
yeah, I'm like, it's a few things that lead up.
it does, it's like all
We're like
paths lead to
soulmates,
there.
yeah.
That's so wonderful. I feel like a lot of people, though, when they are like international kids like you, where they've lived abroad in many different places, they kind of struggle with the concept of identity or belonging somewhere. So do you feel like you had a place where you belonged, or did you feel like you belonged everywhere or nowhere? How was it for you?
I adapt really quickly, even as a kid. Like I was always busy. Like I had a busy mind. I was either drawing, sketching, looking, wondering. So I think it always kept me occupied, and that always helped with wherever I was. But something about New York, I think because it is a melting pot, and I kind of related to that because I feel like I am a melting pot in a way. Like, so they were familiar with all the cultures. So I felt like, I think all of them kind of clicked when I went to this, like being in New York, because you had all the cultures that I lived there. I immersed in myself. I was able to relate to everyone really quickly, and I think they were able to relate to all the cultures within me. So something, I don't know how to explain it, it's just something about it, like it kind of clicked.
No, that's amazing. I think I felt that way about London because it's also a very multicultural place. You meet people from all different countries, different areas. So it's, I think, as Abdullah said, big cities are like people either love them or hate them. It's not for everybody, but when you are that kind of person who can fit in that kind of place, you can find people so easily because they're from everywhere, and you learn so much.
Yes.
So I don't know, that's how I found it. We're very opposite of your experience, I think.
Yeah, you know, my experience is not that I hated the city itself. It was a beautiful city. It's just I hated my time there, you know, because it was, maybe it was the season itself, the time itself. It was so crowded. You couldn't go anywhere. There were so many
Did you go
troubles.
rushed? Was it like the fast-paced aspect? Like you're like, oh, I need to do something. Like, I
Yeah,
need to,
you know, everyone, you know, whenever I travel, I always like to take the moment in, right? And everyone there just seems like oh, I gotta go this place, I gotta reach this place, I gotta be there. You know, nobody's there to enjoy the
You're
place,
like,
to
where do I
enjoy.
go? Like, what do I, okay.
Yeah. So there's no moment of feeling the serenity of it. But the city itself, you know, the weather, it was in winter. It was amazing. The food is amazing as well. Like I say, it's a melting pot of so many cultures.
Yeah, and cuisines, yeah.
It is. And I think, you know, the reason why it kind of resonated with you is because you said first you grew up, you know, nursery times in Amsterdam. And New York, for some reason, feels European to me, even though, because I studied like 5 years in Los Angeles, and New York doesn't feel American to me. It just feels completely different.
Well, it was called New Amsterdam.
Really?
And there's
I didn't know
streets
that.
named after Dutch areas like Utrecht, and but you call it Utrecht in
Oh, I
New
had
York.
no
So,
idea.
yeah.
That's so cool.
So
Because I know their main hospital is called New Amsterdam or something.
yeah.
True. It never linked in my brain.
Yeah, back in the day. So fun fact, yeah. So I'm like, maybe it's a sign. Yeah.
Maybe. So since you grew up with such an international kind of approach to life and observing things, what would you say is the thing that, or lesson that stuck to you the most, no matter where you were?
I think adaptation. You just kind of got to make the most of where you are. I really try to immerse myself in every culture, in the people I meet. I love that about New York. You got to meet someone new every day, and everybody had a story to tell. You were kind of always inspired, and I think that really helps with wherever you are. I think the people, and I'm a very social person, so I really like to learn people's stories and their backgrounds, and I think you learn and grow through that. So I like to think of myself as ever evolving. So like New York really helped. Like I feel like I was evolving every day with meeting new people. But that goes for anywhere. That goes for any country, like with people, I guess.
Yeah, I feel like the place that you were in, like, it resonates so much from the other places you were in as well. And just having that kind of adaptability, as you said, in big cities like New York, I think it's very important to be able to go with the flow a lot because things change so quickly and you're meeting different people and it's that high-paced environment. So I'm glad you were able to kind of really find yourself there and find your place. We are going to take a very quick break. Okay. No, we can, dive further into your journey. Okay, so stay tuned for after the break.
And of course, we are back, ladies and gentlemen, from that quick break. Now, Shaikha, I do want to ask you about something, because you mentioned before in the episode that you like to make friends, you are very social, you like talking to people. Would you say those kind of skills came to you, from being so, all over the world, meeting new people, trying to, engage with them and everything? Or is it something you've always been natural at, whether you've been around or not?
No, I've been a very shy child that was in my own world of drawing, action figures, whatever, graffiti in the notebook, and I was very to myself. but I was very observant. So like I could adapt and understand people very quickly. And I think people resonate with that. And I think that helped in my adulthood because I'm like, okay, this person's a little shy, or this person, like I kind of, quickly adapt to the person that I'm speaking to. And I think that helps as an adult, if that makes sense.
It does. I actually
Yeah.
resonate with that because I was also a very shy kid who kept to myself and lived in my own world. I was just reading books. I was also just doing artsy things and just like I used to hate having to go to family gatherings, and
Yes.
I would bring a book with me everywhere. My dad would get so annoyed with me because I want to read at the family gathering instead of talk to
Yes,
people. But as I got older, I feel like I came out of my shell. And like when I left and studied outside, that also helped me a lot to kind of focus on who I am. And it forced me to kind of make friends as well, because you have to kind of
Yeah.
adapt, as you said. But it is interesting how being that kind of shy kid, observing, can help you actually be more social later on without you even knowing. I
Yeah.
think it's like the opposite, but you kind of are really good at figuring out
Yeah,
people.
and now you're a host.
Yeah, like it's very different.
Yeah.
Like if you talk to me way back then, no one would expect that I would be doing this right now at all, you
Exactly.
know?
Like, yeah, I get it. No, I mean, being a kid that's like to myself, and then growing up, I don't know how I got here, to be honest. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but I'm glad we're here. I think also the language barrier is very important. I feel like there's two different personalities that come with that. Like when you're in Arabic, I think I'm more reserved and shy, but in English, I'm like, hello, I know how to express myself more. So I don't know if I think that plays a big part in it too, because I'm still adapting it's been a year since I moved here, so I feel like that's been a hurdle for me. But we're learning.
No, I think that's so
Yeah.
true. And I think I've heard a lot of people say that the way they act when they speak a certain language changes.
Yeah.
So it's a very normal experience, I think.
It is, yeah. I think if you talk to me in Arabic and you talk to me in English, it's also the same kind of, experience. It's kind of two different personalities, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, I do want to ask you about something because before you got into design, everything, you were studying marketing, I believe.
I did.
Yeah. So, was there a moment that kind of made you feel like, okay, this is not the place for me. I got to make this transition. I got to follow my artistic, visions.
It was never a place for me. Maybe start there. And then I think even with my marketing projects, I was, you had to like invent a business and pitch it to your professors. And the most exciting thing about the business was creating the logo for me. Always like it was word art before I knew how to handle Adobe or even knew what Adobe was. I was just like on Paint Bucket on Microsoft and like making it work. And I'm like, I'm not supposed to be here. And by the grace of God, like I got a merit scholarship randomly and moved immediately.
And you moved to New York?
I moved to Baltimore.
Baltimore.
Yes.
So how did you end up in New York? Like, was it part of your design career, or was it a separate situation?
I was supposed to do OPT. I was also supposed to do Parsons. I got accepted.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and then, COVID happened. It was a really strange time, but I just stuck around. I'm like, I'm meant to be here, so I'm gonna make it work. And I started networking, freelancing, and it just kept working for me, so I just stuck around.
And do you feel like traveling and living in so many different places helped you kind of with design as well? Or was it more just when you were based in New York? Because I think we've all watched all the movies and shows that talk about design and art and creativity in New York. It's such a big concept there.
Yes. I think I was always an artist before I was a designer, even growing up. It was my second language, and I think it just made sense for it to translate into design. It was always art and technology for me. So it kind of blended the two, and it just translated well. It made sense.
And speaking about it being translated well, did that transition, initially at the first steps, have any difficulties? Like, because I know when you are into the art sides, right? You're making, you're noodling, you're drawing, whatever. But then when you actively study it, when you actively go into it, there are rules, there are regulations, there are, formats, whatever within it. So have you found those kind of difficulties at first, or was it all felt just natural?
The same way you would adapt to people, you kind of have to adapt to clients. You have to kind of be a chameleon in understanding what they want for their own brand, their aesthetic, their style. Um, Sitting down with a client, it's a very important part of the process of understanding their vision and their taste, and because everyone is different. So it worked out really well of just, the people skills into my graphic design skills and understanding what my client is actually after, went hand in hand pretty well.
Makes sense because you have to deal with clients a lot, and as you said, they can be very different from each other. Some might be very agreeable, some might be difficult to work with, and you have to adapt to all of that.
Yeah.
So it feels like the key thing here is adaptability in all
Yes.
aspects. And you've described before that you've been surrounded by people who are very unapologetically themselves and kind of know who they are. Do you think that environment kind of translated or changed your work or changed you?
I think changed me. Because sometimes here, you kind of have to put on not a performance.
Like a face almost.
Yeah, you have to be the best version of yourself. And in New York, you are the best version of yourself to yourself. You get to express yourself through fashion and through your craft, like whatever it is you want to. You can talk however, you just... versus here, it's a little more reserved.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are trying to branch out more, but it's a completely different environment in New York versus here.
I could also go way more into that, but I'm not gonna bring any more New Yorkers haters against me. So let's put it at that.
Watch yourself. Yeah.
Now I do want to ask you about something because being a designer, illustrator, it's the art form of transforming I would say ideas into visuals. What is it about that process that resonates the most to you, especially when dealing with clients and dealing with visuals that you want to bring them on the page onto people?
With illustrating?
Yeah, I mean both sides. And the illustrating, the thing you really like about that entire process.
I think my favorite graphic design branches into a lot of things. Like you have branding, web designing, merchandising. I do like merchandising and branding because you're a little more free. There's a little more creative control with creating an identity and a brand identity, and that is very fun to me because it's kind of more up to me than the client. I mean, obviously, they give me a direction or an aesthetic that they would like to go to, but otherwise it's free range. So I think that's my favorite part in design because it's like more controlled, if that makes sense.
It does, because even though you have so many different options, there's like a way of doing it and stuff.
Yeah.
And speaking of that, like, how does your creative vision work? Like, what happens behind the scenes for you? Like, how do you get a concept or idea into being?
A lot of research. I always give myself a 2 weeks grace period to do my research. Like in fashion, graphic design, there's a lot of trends with fonts, just stylistically. It's evolving. Even the tools are evolving. There's new updates to Illustrator all the time, so you kind of have to keep up to date. So I think in that sense of just research, like you would in styles, like, polka dots are in. The same way cursive is in design. So I think there's always, you have to kind of keep an eye out all the time. It's always evolving. So the research process is very important before you start the creative process.
I never thought of that as like certain fonts being in or not. That's a new thing for me.
Yeah.
It is, yeah. I'm completely clueless with this because I just know that there are certain fonts that movies like, because movies is the only thing I do consume.
Yeah.
So I know fonts when it's released that, but I didn't know that they play a
Yeah.
huge role in design and fashion, all of that.
Yeah, you have designers like Saul Bass. He did Mad Men, that Leonardo DiCaprio movie, Catch Me If You Can.
Oh my
I love that
He did,
movie.
he did the intros for that. So that's a whole different craft and style within itself. And being a designer, you kind of have to learn all of them, so you can understand how to create all of them. I mean, some have their own aesthetic, some have their own style that you would approach as a client, but I think to be a good designer, you'd have to understand, like, or keep an eye out for all that's happening.
You know, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And talking more about the fashion side of things, I know you have a great interest in fashion design and like clothes. So I wanted to ask you, is fashion a form of self-expression or storytelling for you?
Yeah, fashion is very personal to me. It's an extension of myself. Dressing, you know, like some people express themselves through music. For me, it's what I wear. I have a lot of fun with it. And I think weirdly, because people trust my fashion sense, they trust my design abilities. I don't know why that works out, but that's always, I feel like, a trend where like, oh, I love your style. Can you do this logo for me? Can you do this brand for me? Yeah, weirdly, it kind of goes hand in hand.
MashaAllah. And then how do you say, you found your artistic voice, especially when it comes to the choices you make within your designs?
Yeah.
Is it something you picked up along the way, or is it something, whatever it feels natural to you?
I think middle school is where I found my style. I was very heavily into graffiti growing up and seeing different artists. I was influenced. I was kind of reiterating their own style until I found my own. Like I was kind of like redrawing or tracing and understanding different like noses, mouths, letters, whatever, until I'm like, oh, I like this or I like this, and eventually found my own voice within it. But growing up in Amsterdam, I think because of all the museums and the art scene too, I was very inspired, and I think it always stuck. Like art always, it was like the one consistent thing in my life.
Honestly, that's beautiful. And we are running out of time. So I want to just ask you, like, looking back, what are you most proud of?
Being here. It's my first time living here as an adult, and it's my first year officially back. So I'm really proud of like how I've adapted and excited where else my career takes me.
I'm excited about that too, and I wish you the best of luck with
Thank
everything.
you.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
With that, we are going to take a very quick break. And we're back from that short break. And honestly, Abdullah, I love talking to Shaikha. The way that she approaches the world is so optimistic and so positive. From a young age, she was able to see that she was blessed to try different cultures. And even though it might have been difficult for a lot of people, she found a strength in herself, which I found very inspiring.
It is, and like she said, I can't imagine being in a position where I constantly having to change new friends, right? Especially from a young age, when all the time you establish that circle of friends, you're trying to change them. But mashallah, she said she got evolved, she adapted to them. She learned how to make friends every time she goes. She's very sociable. She overcame her shyness. It was amazing talking to her.
It was. Even moving back here at 13, she was able to kind of find the best in things, later going on to study her dreams in design, which was something I think not everyone can do. And mashallah, she really focused on the word adaptability and the importance of it, and I hope the audience takes that away as well. And that's all we have for today. We'll see you next time.